how will to power manifests itself in conversations, namely how some strong opinions that you have wherever you've acquired them, like not necessarily your opinions, drag the discussion sideways, at least sometimes. Greetings, this is Eugene the Philosopher, the greatest living philosopher after the unfortunate passing of Quentin Robert de Nameland, who has been the greatest living philosopher before me. You may have noticed that oftentimes people in conversations start like thinking and speaking in sort of talking points. Alright, and especially it's noticeable when the discussion is about some sort of abstract or political topics, alright? Subjects there, rather. And this is what this video is going to be about, alright? So, it looks like sometimes that the discussion, like it was about something, whatever type of something, okay? But then it like starts, as a person starts making their point, it starts like diverging or like drifting pretty slowly but steadily into some neighboring area, let's say. Almost like being magnetically attracted to some other highway, let's put it this way, alright? And this highway is like one of the talking points that this person has. Like, let's say, I don't know, like Jews are bad or something like that. If we're talking about politics. I mean, just as an example, alright? It might be anything, like eating meat is bad, or like we should keep our environment clean, or something like that. You know, some pretty strong opinion, let's say, alright? Anyway. So that's kind of the point of this video, like how and why does this happen, alright? Like what kind of mechanisms are at play here? But I mean, obviously you probably noticed that at the very least sometimes. And one of the first things I want to note here is that, well, most of these talking points are not yours, right? Most of the things that you've learned, most of your opinions, actually, I've made this point previously. And ironically, this is actually not even my point. I've actually also taken it from somebody else, but most of your opinions are not yours. Most of my opinions are not mine. By the way, watch my video, Adopted Stories. I'll link it in the description, where I examine like how we take, almost like gobble up, stories that other people tell. So talking points is no exception. Like we take them, sometimes we take them as a placeholder, like we explore some new area and we go and listen to some expert, let's say, or without air quotes or with them, I don't know. And this expert has an opinion about this, and therefore, as you don't know anything about this area, like you tend to actually adopt this opinion of this expert as your own because, well, how else would you know? Like you have no opinion of your own anyway, alright? And obviously, as you're growing up, parents sort of serve as first opinion givers, right, to you. And often these opinions actually, if we're talking about psychoanalysis or whatever the heck, like they can hold up for pretty much all of your life, even on subconscious level, right? Supposedly, at the very least. So yeah, that's what happens. And it's a normal process, all right? So sometimes, of course, people change their opinion, like they've developed themselves personally or whatever, like their circumstances have changed. So they may have arrived at other opinions, so they may start listening to other people with like diametrically opposed opinions, and they adopt these as their talking points. Like again, I can give myself as an example where I was more or less a socialist, then I was more or less like a nihilist, and then I became a socialist again, and then I became like a free market advocate, alright? Something like that. In the span of like from 15 years old to 25, roughly. All of these transformations happened, alright? Okay. So any talking point is a weapon, basically. That would be my point. Yeah. So let's return, like, to sort of wrap up this initial exposition. So the discussion may drift into one of these sort of talking points that we're talking about. Forgive me for the tautology. And like it's almost like magnetically attracted to it, all right? And like to whatever other neighboring talking point a person may have, all right? So we're firstly in this sort of no man's land in between. We're talking about something perhaps not even so much related to any of the talking points neither of us have, for example, but one of us says, okay, will not says explicitly, but like thinks, okay, how can I actually navigate this? And then they start drifting into one of the talking points they do know, like one of the known highways, known patterns of thinking, etc., etc. So they drag the discussion into this area, because if you're not in the position to make any sort of statement, that is, you don't have anything to say, you're kind of, I don't know. Well, that much I do know is that Jews are bad. So let's talk about this instead. And that, by the way, explains what we were talking about initially, all right? And so any talking point like this is a weapon, right? It gives you a feeling of power. And that's what it's all about. It's how will to power manifests itself in a conversation. Hence, everything is will to power. Not the only instance of this, but it's one of the instances of manifestation of this principle of will to power in a regular conversation. So a talking point you may have is a weapon. It gives you a feeling of power. It's almost like a hammer, which makes everything look like nails. All right. So we're in this no man's land which doesn't look like a nail, but since you have this hammer nearby, you're saying, okay, this is a nail after all. I'm gonna hammer you after all. All right. And that's why today people who provide these talking points are so popular. And you know, I'm talking about like pundits, experts, or experts without air quotes, media personalities, analysts, etc. With all the social media stuff that we have, again, which reinforces this personal branding, the hostile economy type of stuff, where a person X is known for their knowledge in chemical, how do you call it, chemical cooking or whatever, or being good at shooting bows, or being good at, I don't know, arranging drum sets at a concert, or I don't know, like whatever, or being an expert in like trade union history of 20th century, or whatever, right? And so people listen to them, acquire some talking points from them, and so they have them established, and now they have extra power because, well, who knows, in some sort of discussion like 2 years later with some random other person, they might encounter a situation where, okay, this talking point is now useful. I can actually, like, you know, drag it out of my inventory and like shoot it into the conversation. So this is what I'm talking about. Why is it giving you a feeling of power? Like you really feel that, okay, I have some extra stuff that I can use when the situation would be appropriate or not very appropriate. All right. Okay. So today everybody needs to have an opinion. All right. Because if you don't have an opinion, you're out of the game, more or less. You're invisible. And even among groups of friends, you know, you can encounter this sort of situation where your friends are talking about something, but you don't have anything to say, so you're feeling left out, right? So you start reaching to your phone or something. So yeah, so that's why like this manufacturing of opinions is kind of an important branch of modern culture, with again all the social media stuff, and not only, again, in real life stuff as well. So having an opinion, having this weapon in your inventory is a resource. All right, it makes you look cool, it makes you look strong, it makes you look powerful, etc., etc. So hence it increases your power, because will to power, all right? Hence, it is a thing, all right? But that's one thing. Like, why is it happening? Why do discussions are sometimes like deviated into some like rapid pneumatic mail type of transfer to somewhere, we don't know where, oftentimes. And another thing to note is that these talking points, these like sort of strong opinions, often, if not always, have life of their own, so to speak. They're almost like living organisms, or viruses, if you wish. So they have their own programming, or demons, if you feel like more mystical and like medieval about it. So, and they tend to claim these, I mean, you may interpret the process as the talking point having a life of its own and being strong on its own. So it sort of claims whatever neighboring space it can find in your, mental palace or whatever. And also it manifests itself in the actual space of the actual conversation you're having with someone. So it's almost like it's being, possessed, or you are being possessed, right? By this little sub-demon in you, by this little pattern of thinking, by this idea, or again, this quote from Inception, right? The idea is the most resilient parasite, or the opinion you have, right? Actually, like, the question is, do you have an opinion, or do the opinion has you, right? That's a good question in this respect, at the very least. So it claims the neighboring topics, but by virtue of being a stronger topic, at least in your, again, mental palace. I don't have any other better analogy. So they indeed behave almost like a virus, or a strong country, you might say. If there's like a strong country, it looks for a chance to invade the neighboring countries, etc., etc., and establish their power over it. Again, same mechanisms of will to power work pretty much everywhere, in your soul, in your mental palace, in like geography, geopolitics, or just politics, and in regular culture, in like person-to-person conversations, as you can see. All right, and you can indeed be sometimes so obsessed with one of these opinions that it like completely like overtakes you, and it's sometimes pretty sad to see, like, again, the proverbialist example of this would be veganism, right? Like, you say, hello, my name is John, and they say, I'm vegan. Like, it's like the very first thing they say, alright? It's like their obsession is so much that, like, their whole personality is, like, determined by the fact that they are vegan, right? Or something. And they need to proselytize it as well. They need to spread the virus on other people as well. That's how the basic will to power pattern works, at the very least. Alright. Feminism, another example. What else is there? Political opinions, like any sort of like communism, or like far right, like Nazis and stuff, or whatever. I mean, there are plenty examples. All right. Yeah. So hence, it is kind of bad when a person is opening like this, right? With something like this. It means that they are obsessed by this talking point, rather than they are in control of their own life, of their own personality, of their own sub-network of culture, let's say. Alright, and probably the last note I wish to make with regards to this topic is how it actually, like, even if we're talking about abstract stuff, even like scientific theories is also another example of this. Like, by the way, like, I see this in my Facebook feed all the time. Like, again, people who have talking points like, comets are electric, or stars are electric, for example. Like, random article about the sun being posted somewhere, And the comment is by this very enlightened person, how would they know anything? Stars are electric. And like it has no relevance to the topic of the article itself, but I mean, stars are electric. So we're drifting into we're like magnetically drawn into this highway that stars are electric, right? Like, so nobody cares what the initial topic was even about. Like, really, who cares? Because stars are electric, right? How, why, in which respect, again, like nobody cares really. And I mean this ironically. I meant specifically that this person doesn't really care, alright? But they became like a tool of this opinion, essentially. A mouthpiece, literally, a portal for this opinion to, like, spread out into the world, right? Like, again, when you're like possessed by demons, like you become a portal for demons to influence the world, right? And again, I'm not implying that demons are real or something like that. I'm just saying that it actually looks like practically it's almost like it is the case, right? For better or worse. So it brings this dramatic character to this pattern, this sort of black and whiting of everything, if you wish. And what do I mean by that is that like oppositions are being artificially introduced into a conversation, alright? So a conversation was more or less neutral, but a person has this strong talking point which has like a strong opposition included into it, like let's say socialism versus free market, or let's say, alright? And we have like a random problem, like homelessness or whatever, not so random, but whatever. And we're talking about homelessness, but then the person says, okay, it's all because of the evil capitalists. So we're already on this highway, alright? And like the discussion has suddenly turned into, are you a capitalist? Because I'm not, alright? And, well, of course you can reverse it and say another person might have the very same highway of, socialism versus free market, but on the free market side. We'll talk about homelessness and suddenly the discussion is shifted like, it's because of stupid commies controlling all of the world, over the world, right? This is, by the way, which a lot of my videos are about, alright? That's why we have, such a problem with homelessness, alright? Are you a commie yourself, huh? Maybe you're part of the problem. So this is the black and whiting I'm talking about. The rather neutral topic of discussion is turning into an excuse to introduce political oppositions, like black and whiting the situation. Like, are you for or against us? All right, something like that. Are you helping reducing suffering in the world, or are you worsening it? Actually, according to me, in my opinion, wherever the hell I've obtained it at or from. All right. So we're sort of gravitationally drawing our vis-a-vis, our other conversationalists to one of these opposing poles, one of these sides. You know, so the typical phrase is that, so you're saying that, you know, you're saying that taxation is robbery, or you're saying that, I don't know, equality is bad, or you're saying that, you know, all these kinds of straw manning, all right? So it brings definitely, from what I've described above, it should be pretty clear that any sort of strong talking point introduces this politicization of narrative into any sort of conversation almost by default, almost by necessity, all right? And what do I mean by politicization? It forces you to choose sides, all right? Which again sort of illustrates how politics is or are, I don't know, is infectious naturally, like inherently. Which is of course even more obvious when we're like scaling the problem up to the level of society, alright? We're not even talking about the personal one-to-one or group of friends type of conversation, where we're talking about like a public dialogue, like in the social media or just mass media, or like official statements of politicians and stuff. So in this case, you are often forced to choose sides. And again, the case of war is a very obvious case of this, all right? Where you are literally, physically forced to choose a side. Okay. Yeah, that's probably all that I wanted to talk about. So what we've discussed in this video is how will to power manifests itself in conversations, namely how some strong opinions that you have wherever you've acquired them, like not necessarily your opinions, drag the discussion sideways, at least sometimes. How talking points serve as almost like magnets, attracting the conversation to themselves, and how them doing so actually helps the producers of the opinions and talking points. Well, it increases their power in the modern society due to the nature of the society itself, i.e. everything being like transparent, everyone talking to everyone on the social media, and everyone almost by necessity having an opinion, whether it is their own opinion or an opinion they've taken from some talking head elsewhere, like this one, for example. All right? Okay. Thank you for watching. The eons are closing.